yesterday, and I think he introduced the idea of Micah last week. Is that right? Had an introduction? What were some of the key things you remember? What are some important aspects of Micah?
I don't know that this is from last week, but
Yeah.
he was a contemporary of Isaiah.
Isaiah. Mm-hmm.
Isaiah prophesied mainly in Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
where he lived, I
Yeah.
think. And I don't remember the town that Micah lived in, but it was like 25 miles
Okay. Mm-hmm.
kind of southwest.
Yeah, Micah was from Morriseth, or was from Morriseth. Mm-hmm. Good. What else?
And it was during the reign of Hezekiah, I
Hezek-
think.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At least he was one of the kings that ruled while Micah was prophesying, and the guesstimation of the length of time that he served, I think, was 55 years,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
give or take, I guess.
Uh-huh.
He calls us to listen. A lot of the things we talk about, listen. Hear ye. It's there.
I wouldn't be surprised we're going to try to go through the first couple of chapters today. And I'm not sure how many times I'm going to mention listen, pay attention. You with me? Yeah. Yeah. That's often an overlooked part of communication, isn't it? Usually when people think I'm a good communicator, or he's a good communicator, or that means they can disseminate information clearly and meaningfully. But that's part of it. Another important aspect is listening. We're hearing, paying attention. Yeah. Any other highlights about Micah? The person or the book? Yeah, the person or the book.
The highlight for me is Micah 6:8.
Well, I was going to start off with that. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to identify a key verse in a book.
Well, it's the one. It's in the last part of verse 8 of chapter 6, I think.
Yeah.
And it's what does the Lord require of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Justly, to love mercy, and to, I don't know, there are three things.
Walk humbly. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was going to start off with, after this initial question, I was going to start off with that. I'm going to urge, I think we have about a 6-week or so study looking at Micah. And I would urge us, as we do our own individual reading on Micah and studying and contemplating and discernment, that we look at Micah chapter 6, maybe verses 6 through 8, and just focus on that for a few minutes as we start our study. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings? With calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? With 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I would say that's it, but there's actually a lot to that brief little passage. Now, as we look through Micah, there are 3 cycles. I know there's 3 oracles, but you can also divide it or look at it as 3 cycles. The sins of the people, the punishment from God to come, and the hope for the faithful. So if we just broke those down or identified them as one word each, the 3 cycles in Micah are sins, destruction, and restoration. Sins, destruction, and restoration. And all those begin with the admonition for us to do what?
Listen.
To listen, to hear. Yeah. If you were to think of the word doom or doomsday, what comes to mind?
Loss,
D-
destruction.
I don't want class to become political. Last day, okay. Doom or doomsday? Apocalypse? Okay.
Annihilation.
Those, yeah, annihilation. Terrible fate, failure, destruction, death. As we start looking at Micah chapters 1 and 2, chapter 1 describes Samaria being doomed. And chapter 2, in essence, summarizes the brutality of those who rule. So not necessarily the most pleasant things to consider, but chapters 1 and 2, maybe through 3, in essence, are the first oracle of Micah, which is the oracle of doom. So hopefully as we go through the next few minutes in our visit with one another, we could probably summarize our discussion this morning. The immediate national judgment is coming. First part of chapter 1, the judgment is announced. Middle part of chapter 1, the judgment is described. The latter part of chapter 1, the judgment is explained. And also throughout chapter 2, the judgment is explained. What piqued my curiosity as I was getting ready for class this morning is one of our hymns. It's hard for me just to read a hymn, because inevitably when I start reading it, I think of the tune, and so if I start going, it's like I'm trying to sing it. Apologize for that. But in 712 in our hymnal, is Jesus is coming soon. 712. That's right. I'll read the first verse and the chorus. I remember chapter 1 of Micah, Samaria is doomed. Chapter 2, the brutality of those who rule. Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear now is at stake. Humbling your heart to God. What does chapter 6, verse 8 tell us to do? Walk humbly. Saves from the chastening rod. Seek the way pilgrims trod. Christians awake. Why? Because Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet their what? Doom. Trumpets will surely sound. All of the dead shall rise. The righteous will meet in the skies, going where no one dies, heavenward bound. Micah chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. The word of the Lord that came to Micah of Moresheth during the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, the vision he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. Hear, you peoples, all of you. Listen, earth and all who live in it, that the sovereign Lord may bear witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. Look, the Lord is coming from his dwelling place. He comes down and treads on the heights of the earth. The mountains melt beneath him, and the valleys split apart like wax before the fire, like water rushing down a slope. All this is because of Jacob's transgression, because of the sins of the people of Israel. What is Jacob's transgression? What is Judah's high place? Is it not Jerusalem? What was going on in society then? I can give you a hint. What's going on in society now? At least what do we read most commonly in news? Conflict? What's going on in the world? What's going on in the world now was going on in the world when Micah wrote this. Conflict, division, scheming, bribes, corruption. Sounds kind of familiar. And in those vivid images, we see the Lord is descending from heaven and is coming here and is coming with judgment. In other words, there's consequences. There's consequences for what we do. There's consequences for us. There's consequences for the people around us. If a person were to hear a message, a sermon, a class, and it just focused on consequences. You do this, this is the result. Is that very well received? Do people receive that very well? Maybe some of us are going like, no, why not? Why is that not a, why wouldn't that get people's attention?
Some do, most don't.
Some don't. Mm-hmm.
Most don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I'm okay. Yeah. It's a hard lesson to learn. Maybe it's a hard lesson to hear. You have to be kind of self-contemplative. Listen. Pay attention. You with me? There were two main sins that Micah kind of focuses on here, and actually throughout the book, and it's the perversion of worship, and then secondly, injustice that's done to others. So if the mountains and valleys, as we read there in verses 1 through 5, if the mountains and valleys could not stand before God, what chance does sinful man have? Probably not much. Probably not a lot of hope. The descent of the Lord is because the sins committed by the people. And what he's telling the people is there's consequences. If we read verses 6 and 7 in chapter 1. Therefore, I will make Samaria a heap of rubble, a place for planting vineyards. I will pour her stones into the valley, lay bare her foundations. All her idols will be broken to pieces. All her temple gifts will be burned with fire. I will destroy all her images, since she gathered her gifts from the wages of prostitutes. As the wages of prostitutes, they will again be used. Why would at the time, maybe why do people now turn to idol worship? If people do turn to that now, what is idol worship? What are we worshiping? What do people... Worshiping themselves? Okay.
I think people turn to idol worship because we are more comfortable with something that we can see, we can touch,
Mm-hmm.
we can hold.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to do that
Easy? Comfortable? Where do those words fit in with our walk with God? We think. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. We think blank is important, or that is important. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The idol worship. Yeah. So it's become tradition. Oh wow. I don't think I would have considered that, but I think that's a pretty good observation. I've done it for centuries. Wow. Hmm. Well, did we mention the word earlier? Easy, comfortable. Yeah, I think it is easy to be in a routine. It is easy to become comfortable. We think this is what's important. We think that's God's direction for our life. And sometimes our walk with God can be a little bit uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. 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 Information overload's easy. I think there's a Jesus often taught with using what? Parables. Why would he teach using parables? It's easy to understand, yet poignant and meaningful. And you can remember it. And theologically, those parables oftentimes aren't the most deep things under the sun. But pragmatically, wow, I can remember that. The people's worship had been perverted. They were turning to idols. They weren't focusing on God. And here comes God and the judgment for such. So if we take a look at verses 6 and 7 and focus on that there we find the reasons for the judgment. Micah didn't simply announce judgment. He cared deeply for the people. If we take a look at verses 8 and 9. Because of this, I will weep and wail. If somebody weeps and wails on behalf of somebody else, how do they think about that person or those people? If you're going to weep for somebody, you must have a pretty strong care and concern for them. Because of this, I will weep and wail. I will go about barefoot and naked. I will howl like a jackal and moan like an owl. For Samaria's plague is incurable. It has spread to Judah. It has reached the very gate of my people. So Micah didn't simply announce the judgment. He cared so deeply for the people that he wept for them. Yet the people had fallen to the point that the wounds or the plague, some versions of Scripture talk about a wound and an infection that's incurable. My Bible talks about a plague that's incurable. If there's an infection or a plague, what's the potential of that infection or that plague? It might spread. It might spread. Yeah. So if we read Micah 1, verses 10 through 16, this is where we come into the idea of pay attention. You with me? Turn from your sin. It hurt Micah deeply to think that some would rejoice at the pain of God's people. There are people today who rejoice at the pain of God's people. And that hurt Micah deeply. Towards the end of the chapter, first chapter of Micah, there are several cities that are mentioned. And judgment is rendered upon city after city after city after city. Samaria's wounds, Samaria's injury, Samaria's infection spread to other places. And as you go through those towns, it's a little bit of sarcasm going on there. If we read like verses, maybe 10-ish through about 12. Tell it not to Gath. Well, Gath in Hebrew sounds like the word tell. So tell it not to tell. Weep not at all. In Beth Oprah means house of dust. So in house of dust, roll in the dust. Pass by naked and in shame, you who live in Shaphir. Sounds like the word pleasant in Hebrew. So pass by naked and in shame, you who live in pleasant. Those who live in Zanan, sounds like the Hebrew word for come out. So those of you who live in come out will not come out. Beth Ezel is in mourning. Those who live in Maroth writhe in pain, waiting for relief. Moroth sounds like bitter in Hebrew. So the evil, the injury, the infection, the wound in one place would spread. If I were to ask, describe somebody with a noble character, how would you describe that person? She's a woman of noble character. Can be trusted. Okay. I like that word trust. It's a simple word, simple to understand, but it's pretty powerful. Honest. Okay. Fair. Yeah, I like that. Truthful. Yeah. Thinks of others, so selfless. Or a person who exudes selflessness. Does good works. Okay. Oh, that guy? Oh, he's kind of a questionable character. How do you describe that person? Can't be trusted. I spent enough time around college students the last 37 years. Sketch. They'd say sketch. Sketchy. Oh, I like that. Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Okay, I like that. Well, actions speak 1,000 words, huh? Yeah. So if you have a person, she's of noble character now, what's she likely to be later? Of noble character. Yeah. You have somebody now, he's a little sketch. What's he likely to be later? Little sketch. Little sketch. So Micah is showing the readers how our character becomes our future. Our character becomes our future. If, for a moment, consider the words hate and love, what comes to mind? Maybe one of those individually or maybe together. Hate and love. Opposites, okay? Hate and love. Are those very strong emotions? They're opposites. Are they very strong emotions? Okay, one fills us up and one empties us. Okay, like that. I think they're opposites. I think they have very, very distinct meanings, very strong, powerful words, even though they're simple words. They stir very strong emotions, one side or the other. I wonder if maybe over the years we have used those terms in such a way that it almost undermines the significance and the powerful nature of both. I hate folding clothes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I love the smell of freshly cut grass. So I wonder if they've been diluted some because we use them in very kind of blasé. I hate folding clothes. I mean, that's in the whole realm of things, folding clothes is not terribly significant. Oh, it is. I mowed the lawn yesterday for the first time this season. It was Mm-hmm. How many of us have heard the phrase, God hates sin but loves the sinner? God is what? There's a song. God is love. How can God hate? Mm-hmm. If someone is maybe struggling in their faith, would that phrase, God hates sin but loves the sinner, how would that come across to somebody? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't like you, but I love you. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you love your kids.
Mm-hmm.
As she just said, you don't
You,
always like
you,
what they
you
do.
don't always care for what they do. Mm-hmm.
And
So,
sometimes you can, I think, love them and hate them at the same time.
mm-hmm. Think we're that way with God? Maybe so.
I'm thinking about Moses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God lost patience with him a number of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Moses wasn't exactly squeaky clean, was he?
Well, I mean, when God told him what he was going to do, he said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I won't do that. And God says, yes, you can.
The lame excuses of Moses. Oh, don't use me. I can't speak. I can't. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. God had other plans. Let's look at Micah chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry it out, because it is in their power to do it. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them. They defraud people of their homes. They rob them of their inheritance. Therefore the Lord says, I'm planning disaster against this people, from which you cannot save yourselves. You will no longer walk proudly, for it will be a time of calamity. In that day, people will ridicule you. They will taunt you with this mournful song. We are utterly ruined. My people's possession is divided up. He takes it from me. He assigns our fields to traitors. Therefore, you will have no one in the assembly of the Lord to divide the land by lot. Now, Moses is speaking out against people who plan evil deeds. Connive. Think of that word. That's kind of has a pretty strong connotation to it. Person's thoughts, as we mentioned a moment ago, and a person's plans reflect their character. Good thoughts, good deeds, evil thoughts lead to evil deeds. A person of noble character now is probably going to be of noble character in the future. A person of sketch character now is probably going to be a person of sketch character in the future. And Micah warned against those who would use their position to take advantage of others. This is a loaded question. How can we help ensure that good displaces evil? How can we ensure that good displaces evil? There's a lot of good in the world. There's a lot of evil in the world. I just soon displace. I just soon push out, get rid of evil. What can we do to help ensure that?
I'm not sure we can.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can't, but
But it starts with the individual, I think.
okay. You know, when I was coming up with that question, I thought, how can we ensure good displaces evil? And I added the word, how can we help ensure?
That makes it a better question.
It's probably a little more,
More optimistic.
and probably more realistic too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're called to do it. And oftentimes those callings aren't comfortable and they aren't simple. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think? How can we help ensure that good displaces evil? Mm-hmm. What's true love? Mm-hmm. 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 God is love, and what is love? Love is patient and kind. I think there's a lot to be said for patience. When it comes to dealing with injustices like Micah's dealing with, there's a lot to be said for patience, but then again, Micah tells us there's going to be consequences too. See, it's this interesting kind of juxtaposition between love and hate and sin and justice and restoration. God will bring calamity upon wicked leaders who exploit others. God will bring calamity upon wicked leaders who exploit others. How do you feel when justice is served? Good. You feel good when justice is served. Why do we feel good when justice is served? Oh, keeps better order. Okay, like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It appeals to our sense of what is right.
What is right? Okay.
And we want to go, yes.
Yes. Okay. How do you feel when justice is not served? Mistake. Okay. Somebody made a mistake along the way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's not fair. That's not right. Sets a bad example. There may not be consequences for our actions.
Not
Not,
immediate.
yeah.
Down the road,
Sooner or later.
well, be sure your sin will find you out.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's scripture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Karma.
Yeah. That word karma is used a lot. I don't know about that, but anyway, I know it's used a lot, but it's
Well, it sort of means you get what you
yeah,
deserve.
it could be. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe not sooner, but pay me now or pay me later. Mm. Verses 6 through 11. Do not prophesy, their prophets say. Do not prophesy about these things. Disgrace will not overtake us. You descendants of Jacob, should it be said, does the Lord become impatient? Does he do such things? Do not my words do good to the one whose ways are upright? Lately my people have risen up like an enemy. You strip off the rich robe from those who pass by without a care, like men returning from battle. You drive the women of my people from their pleasant homes. You take away my blessing from their children forever. Get up, go away, for this is not your resting place. Because it is defiled, it is ruined beyond all remedy. If a liar and deceiver comes and says, I will prophesy for you plenty of wine and beer, that would be just the prophet for this people. You know, the message there can come across pretty harsh. People had rejected the truth and needed a little bit of change of course. They needed some direction, they needed some discipline. The false prophets told people what they wanted to hear versus what they needed to hear. And Micah's statements of impending judgment fell upon deaf ears. Micah stands with everyone who was exploited. And I think as we go through chapter 2, we'll find that that chapter is a powerful proclamation of judgment against those who commit injustices, and that's balanced with the hope of restoration and deliverance. So judgment and restoration, there's a balance. Sooner or later, deliverance will happen. Micah tells us that. Any other questions or comments? No?
When I read through Micah, sort of for this class, in chapter 5, verses at 10 through 15, my comment out at the side was, God is going to clean house.
Oh, okay, yeah. Like new sheriff's in town, going to clean house. That's probably pretty good. Maybe a very good way of looking at it. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for being in class.